What's up, guys? This is Andre here with Chase with the 8th episode of the Jiu Jitsu Junction podcast. And the central idea that we will be talking about today is how the Jiu Jitsu landscape has changed over time and what is expected now of beginners and white belts and up to intermediate. Like the whole landscape has changed.
From boring to exciting.
From boring to a different kind of boring if you're somebody who's outside of the sport, right? Like it's all just weird looking rolls. It went from holding someone in your guard until you can strangle them to rolling around and trying to grab someone's foot.
It's true.
But so I would say that jiu-jitsu has just gotten way more developed and complicated, right?
Yeah, because of those competitions, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just because people are gaming the system, and there is just so many different ways to develop beyond, like, you know, the jiu-jitsu basics that was taught like 2 decades ago.
Yeah, I think when the Gracies came, like, their big push was the self-defense side of it, that you could be the smaller, weaker opponent in the disadvantaged position,
right,
and still have a way to survive. And not only, you know, and I think that was one of their first big pushes was in survival, right? Like you can survive with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a part of the mythos of.
Yeah, that was their marketing, right? Yeah. That's what they really pushed. They were smart with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Freaking geniuses.
Like whether or not they actually created jiu-jitsu, there is some debate, but they definitely popularized it, right? And they got there first. They started like this. They started the gi-based training, and everything was based around closed guard and like basic, like heavy pressure, simple submissions before people really understood too much about the submission grappling game in general. They started that development, right? So like during that period of time, there was a lot more priority placed on things like the guard. Everything was based in the gi. Like even if you were somebody who was trying to do like early MMA, like they even wore gis in the ring, right?
Yeah, but that was to relate it to the normal person, right? Like to say, like, because a lot of times the fights are, you know, no shirts, they're not wearing much clothes. So I think that's and maybe I'm wrong, but
that was a marketing thing, I guess.
Yeah, I think that plays a lot in marketing, right? Like it's connected, and it kind of brings it to home. I mean, I loved it. The only part that I loved about watching when Gracie would fight in the UFC was when he would choke somebody with his gi.
Wait, like he did that?
His Ezekiel choke. Yeah.
Oh, he was doing that?
No. Oh, he Ezekiel choked. Yeah, you haven't watched it in the Oh man,
no, I haven't. I have not.
Hey, if you haven't watched it, listen. Now, don't. If you go watch him, I mean, he's on his back, he gets punched a lot, but he ends up submitting and choking every one of them. He dominated people. It was awesome. But he would like literally be getting obliterated on his back and just stay calm, and end up getting a submission. I think there's I think in Charlotte at the Grady Cole, I think he fought and got an Ezekiel. It was in Charlotte from his back. He had an Ezekiel in both his sleeves.
I had no idea.
I may be making that up, but I'm pretty sure.
Well, someone might correct you in the comments.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, listen, you guys definitely know way more. I was picking Andre. We talked about this topic. Like you guys probably know way more about the original,
the origins.
Yeah, the origins of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, right now we're trying to set like a background that we can understand like how things have changed for beginners, right? Being a jiu-jitsu white belt was hard, but it was fundamentally a little simpler back then because the technique set was different. The things that were considered a guard were different. Like nowadays, there's so much emphasis on wrestling. There's so much more emphasis on leg entanglements. There's so much more dynamic passing.
Getting back up.
Getting back up. Just stand up is a thing.
That's one of the reasons why, jiu-jitsu boring sometimes. Some of these competitions with the rule sets, they're allowed to stand up and stand. When you're both standing up, that's a neutral position. Neither of you is an advantage. Mm-hmm. So it usually is a lot of stalemating and a lot of stalling caused there. So
Yeah. I mean, jiu-jitsu is only really a spectator sport for people who are in the sport.
yeah.
But yeah, so like jiu-jitsu has gotten more complicated, and navigating being a beginner, I think, is much more complicated than it was before. Just even if you simplify it and just say, we've added leg locks and then leg entanglements in general.
It's a whole another 50% of the body.
It's a whole nother 50% of the body. and then we add in the emphasis on being able to wrestle. And that's a whole nother discipline that, like, before it was only very barely covered. And a lot of the times it was basic judo instead of basic wrestling. And there's a lot of similarities between the two, right? But you have to be so much more developed.
That was the primary takedown base, right?
Yeah,
in the beginning was judo.
In judo.
And that would be the argument, because Japan is the other possible origin of jiu-jitsu, right? Is that the...
I don't know that much about this.
I think so. I think because there's a lot of jiu-jitsu-esque stuff in judo when you get to the ground.
I mean, judo is the parent of jiu-jitsu. Yeah. For sure, that's the parent martial art. I don't know who to credit.
Just putting it out there.
But yeah, so
I just don't like the whole red belt thing that Gracies do. That's funny.
Is it only the Gracies that do that?
I think so. I'm pretty sure. You have to have their bloodline to be the red belt. Like,
I thought it was just you have to bring something significant to the sport.
I'm pretty sure. I think you have to be Gracie bloodline. Like, you have to. That's the only way you're eligible for red belt. We need to look that up. Then we need to.
Yeah, we do need to look that up. It's not particularly important to the discussion we're having, but it is interesting, right? So like there's just like been this big shift in prioritization of all of these different aspects of grappling. We've added to the grappling pool of skills that you need to have as a whole to be considered good at jiu-jitsu. And now that jiu-jitsu's become more complicated, how are we supposed to navigate all of those additional skills that we're supposed to have if we're going to be good at jiu-jitsu? Because you can't be good at jiu-jitsu if all you have is a closed guard and like a basic mount and side control game the way it used to be.
Yeah, you're not really used to. I remember when I started I was told that was, you just got to be able to survive and kind of escape everything. Like, that's your goal as a white belt. I know what we do to our white belts now.
Yeah, like and like I'm gonna sound like a stodgy traditionalist when I say this, but like, God, white belts learning leg entanglements terrifies the crap out of me. Like,
for sure.
Yeah.
Normal people that aren't training for a living, it scares me.
Yeah.
Bad.
So
I'll
like,
tap to a white belt's like, I tapped. Yeah, you did. You got me.
You got
Don't
me.
Don't ever leg lock me again. But you got me.
Yeah. So like, what are we like in most gyms? Like, it's transitioning to where people are learning leg entanglements at white belt. People are learning that they have to be a part of like they have to learn wrestling in order to be able to keep up with the other people that are in the sport.
That's driven by competition, right?
Yeah.
Competition, you've got a cheat code, right? It's like a cheat code. You're learning leg locks in the beginning, and you're able to go into an intermediate and advanced competition.
Yeah.
I went to a bunch of competitions over 3 years, and that was probably the biggest disappointment. I saw guys that were just better in jiu-jitsu. And I guess I've heard the argument, well, that is jiu-jitsu. But, they were better but the guy underneath, it was a submission only, and intermediate allowed leg locks. And the guy underneath, literally, all he had was leg lock. He tried for leg locks for 15 minutes, and he finally got one.
Yeah.
Did no other jiu-jitsu. Didn't attempt to do anything else. Wouldn't take other things, and it's like.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's kind of, you have to have an understanding of it. Or you're getting your ankle or your knee, and you don't want to go to work the next day injured. So you have to learn it. You have to kind of stay on top of it.
Yeah. So
That's why we teach it. That's why Jeff. So the reason why at our school, the reason why we teach what we teach is if they're going to go compete, then 100% they're going to see it.
Yeah.
So we have to. We kind of, otherwise he probably wouldn't show people leg entanglements until brown belt probably.
Yeah.
Like he would keep that stuff away.
Yeah.
But
you can't have all of your students getting mangled in competition, like actually mangled if they don't know what's happening, and then someone hits something like brutal and fast, like an Estima lock, or if they do a heel hook or anything that's quick, and if you don't know, you don't know anything about it.
The last event we had at our place, one of our guys was completely smashing a guy, and he's a blue belt. It was a blue belt match, but the tournament rules that the show that brought it on, it was a sub only. Mm-hmm. Everything's open.
Yeah.
And he got heel hooked. I think it was called something super goat hook or something. It was something interesting. It was like caught off the side and. I
don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But it was supposed to be a blue belt match.
Yeah.
And it was some specialty goat hook from the backside.
Yeah, I mean it is.
And it crunched his hip up. Yeah. It didn't even because he was like he had never even seen it. He'd never been so and it stunk because I talked to the matchmaker and I was like, hey, this guy's a blue belt. We're trying to, and obviously the guy underneath it, that's what the guy does is leg locks.
Yeah. Yeah. So like survival is so much more complicated now, and like. In order to keep this sport accessible to white belts that want to compete and also still be able to stay safe, what do we tell people? Like if you want to win, just leg lock them. Like shit.
That's tough.
Yeah,
Listen,
yeah.
I have a coach who's watched me compete a lot. I'm better than a lot of people that I've lost to in 90% of the jiu-jitsu game.
Yeah.
And get better at. We got to get better at them.
Yeah.
Right. We got to get better at them. It kind of stinks. I guess from if you're assessing yourself when you're getting better at them, just make sure that you're not. People get caught up. You're catching people in leg locks. So. The reason why they don't get taught early as well, I know in our academy, is it usually stunts your growth. You got kind of a cheat code. You get good at something, so they don't learn they don't focus on guard passing as much because they sit back for heel hooks and they sit back for leg entanglements. So
yeah, I mean specialization is super helpful, and it doesn't even have to be a leg lock specialization, just specialization. If you get one technique to purple belt level when you're a white belt, then you're doing pretty good. Yeah. You just have to get to your game first. But things start to fall apart when you start hitting people that are well developed. Yep. And you don't really, in most decent schools, you don't get to purple belt and above without being relatively well-rounded.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there many, we laugh at the guys where it's like once you get past a leg lock, it's like, okay, literally a submission, but that's what they have.
Yeah.
That's their special. But there's guys that are guillotines the same way, all the above. Mm-hmm. We have one at our gym who's an armbar guy. I give him 3 or 4 arm bars, and once he misses them, it's on.
Yeah.
So you're going to have specialists in it all. It's going to be super important for that white belt for protect you.
Yeah.
Super important. Heck, super important for me.
Yeah. I mean, like even in competition, when you're protected by the rule set, you still have to realize because they might fall back on their training and heel hook you anyway. Yeah. It seems like, the 2 major things that have been added to jiu-jitsu that have made it more complicated is the emphasis on neutral that judo and wrestling being highly integrated into jiu-jitsu has brought. And that's not as fundamentally unsafe. Like there's some things that are pretty gnarly that can happen to you, like getting spiked on your head, but that's really pretty unlikely.
Yeah, the wrestling side is a little tougher as far it's not as
Yeah.
It's more like tough. It isn't going to really get you in
Yeah, they're not going to destroy your knee.
Yeah.
At least it's much less likely.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about it from a safety perspective, it's not as absolutely vital that you develop that skill set yet. Like, I'm thinking about first year white belt. What do they do in order to, navigate this much more complicated grappling landscape? And it seems like you have to at least learn the fundamentals of how to get disentangled from leg locks and see them happening.
Yeah. You got to be familiar with every one, just familiar enough to see it coming, to understand the direction you have to turn.
Yeah.
If there's a couple, at least in my head. Do I straighten my leg, or do I bend my leg? Do I push the knee? Do I turn to my right, or do I turn to my left, or into it or away from it?
Right.
Do I attack the hands, and then can I get their knees below my knee line?
Yeah.
So and there's different orders and all, but that's kind of the checkpoints.
Yeah.
So I think you just got to have enough understanding to know where their hips are on your knee line and which way you need to turn.
Yeah, and these are things we'll cover at some point in the near-ish future on the channel. Not obviously not on the podcast, but these are concepts we're gonna go over, and when that happens, I'll link to it in the description. Maybe put a card above.
Makes sense.
But yeah, you need to understand the fundamental concepts of leg entanglements in order to, at the very least, recognize them. Like right now, I feel like there are a lot of ways that I can personally improve that don't involve going deep into the leg game. So all I'm looking at is what should I be doing to defend? Recognizing what's happening so that if a visitor comes that's a leg lock specialist, I have time to, at the very least,
that's big, right?
At the very least, tap. Right?
Whether there's a visitor coming to our place, or if you travel,
because the norms on leg locks are so different in every school.
And I love, usually when you start jiu-jitsu, like you kind of get to it's a new love, right? So you go on a vacation, and I recommend look up the place local. I've got to train with some of the, I didn't know it until after, and I looked the guys up, that some of the best gyms in the country, just being in a certain area. So look that place up, but be ready for that. You definitely will have to defend your legs. That's probably something I would ask. We talk a lot of times when I'm on the podcast with you, I talk about communication. That's probably one of the things that I would, if you travel, make sure you talk about it. Even in your gym though, right? Even if it's somebody new, you can probably ask them, hey, or tell them, hey, leg locks, no leg locks.
Yeah, legs or no legs.
Yeah, legs or no legs. That's pretty simple. Yeah. Hopefully your gym has a baseline rule on that, but you can.
That's not like posted anywhere though.
No, it isn't in our place.
Not even in like relatively responsible gyms. Dude.
Yeah, no, and I think we're adamant about it, quotation, but not really.
Yeah,
we so
yeah. It's still, you still have in our place, you still have the expectation of being able to recognize it's coming so that you can open your mouth.
Yeah, well, and I make sure that if it's something, I communicate with everybody. I make sure that right now, if me and you roll, do you know if we're going heel hooks or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because we've talked about it before. Yeah. We're okay. We're comfortable with each other. So we can go through a list that, communication, make sure you communicate in your gym, and especially somebody new. Where I'm at, in my journey in jiu-jitsu, I'll still look at somebody and ask them, how long have you been training? Okay, cool. No leg locks. Or, hey, are you rolling leg locks? Yeah, I only know. Okay, well, let's just do. And there's two different kind of categories. You have straight and crooked. Yeah. Straight leg locks is like knee bars, and straight ankle locks, and that's usually allowed up to blue belt, right? Like that's usually all that's allowed at the blue belt.
Yeah. Straight ones and knee bars.
Yeah. Okay, and then crooked doesn't happen until purple belt. Yeah. As far as competition, as far as competitions.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'll even distinguish that with people, and even within our gym, I have that line. I think maybe we even started off at first at straight ankle locks and knee bars, probably.
Yeah.
I think so. I remember us rolling. We would hit knee. We haven't done that in a long time because now it'll come toe holds or heel hooks.
I'm grabbing people's feet.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird fetish with people's toes.
No. I just crunch. Anyway, I just heard that like Coach said, you start with toe holds in order to pass the guard, and then you if you can get to a straight knee bar, you can do that. So he was like, these are the fundamental two things that you do in order to learn legs. So that's all I've been doing. So don't ruin my image online.
That's all I've been doing.
That's all I've been doing.
No
for
wrist
the
lock.
legs.
No,
for the legs.
okay, there we go.
For the legs. I'll wrist lock anybody. I don't give a shit. Anyway, so so for beginners, at the very least, understanding some of the fundamental principles of what leg entanglements look like, just the anatomy of the positions. So there's a lot of value there. Just understand the anatomy of the positions.
Yeah,
so
that's it.
So yeah, I mean, for the first 12 months, learning like the normal fundamental jiu-jitsu that everybody goes along with, and then talking to your partners about legs, no legs. If you have no experience, and probably for the first year you shouldn't be rolling legs anyway, right? No. So but understanding it enough.
Now, rolling legs is different than drilling legs. I'm not saying you shouldn't
drill
get
the
a
legs,
set of series and work. You should probably do that.
Yeah. That's how you learn how to navigate it.
Yeah, you're talking about rolling like live.
Live leg locking is a different animal because everything's quick. And if you're rolling with someone who has something specialized, you're not gonna see it. Yeah. So anyway. So do your normal jiu-jitsu, understand enough about legs to avoid danger. And it's not actually like it almost sounds fear-mongery like this episode, but it's not. You just, there's some very simple things you could do, like understanding when to straighten, to push their hip line down.
We should do a quick video in the next week on that, and just kind of, we can hit all
just the concepts. Yeah. So we'll do that in the near future. But yeah, just like some basics. You don't have to know how to do them. You just need to know how to defend them. Yeah. At least for a few seconds, so that you can verbalize or tap or both. Right. Anyway, so let's see. Is there anything else here? Yeah, I mean, jiu-jitsu chain should be more complicated. Things are more dynamic. There's just a whole lot more breadth to the grappling that's in jiu-jitsu.
Wrestlers, insert wrestlers to anything, in the way they compete is going to raise the stakes a little bit. Just in the way you train, just the way jiu-jitsu is trained. It has to be more takedown defense oriented, guard attention oriented. Yeah. Wrestlers are, you have to be knowledgeable of those positions, just like that. So, that's just as important. You could, be really good at leg entanglements, and wrestler take you down and pass your guard, put his head under your chin, so.
And it's going to take time to be able to deal with either of those things. So I feel like the beginner phase of jiu-jitsu has gotten longer.
Oh, for sure, 100%.
Like
that's better. It's broader. The beginner stage of jiu-jitsu has gotten broader. It's gotten wider.
True. It is wider.
It's more of a foundation, because you have to have a broader understanding. You're not waiting for the other half of the body.
Yeah.
So. Broader.
So we're going to, in the next couple of podcasts, we're going to kind of dive a little bit further into the wrestling component of jiu-jitsu, and like kind of break that down. And then the other one we will go into is how the presence of leg entanglements have changed. What I have it right here. So let me just, like it's going to be like when we should be learning the leg entanglement skills and when we should be learning the wrestling skills from the point of view of a beginner. So
when and what, right? We'll talk a little bit about kind of the direction you should go to, right?
For each of those things.
We're
going to give you something.
At least an outline to know what you should focus on.
Yeah. Just even knowing what to focus on. Like, even if you don't use the resources we build, he'll at least be able to seek out the right resources, right?
For sure.
So anyway, thanks for listening to this 8th episode of the Jiu Jitsu Junction podcast, where we talked about the change in what the landscape looks like in Jiu Jitsu and how it's turned out over time. So anyway, I will see you in the next one.